This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. We appreciate you being with us. I am joined now by Mike Preston. He is the AEDC Executive Director, a whole 2 months on the job.
That's right.
You've already brought home a super project. Well, you've got the packaging, bond financing together for a super project. Welcome to the program.
Well, thanks. That's, I know, 2 months on the job, and now they say, well, what are you going to do next month? Set the bar high out of the gate.
Another couple super projects. You'll be there. Let's talk about how it went this week at the state legislature in the super project special session. I think it would be described as swimmingly by most people.
Absolutely, and as I like to say, economic development is a team sport, and we've got a great team at AEDC. We've got a great team over in the Capitol, the legislature, and obviously Governor Hutchinson. A lot of work has gone in this project. It's months, if not a year, in the making. And I was just fortunate enough to come in at this time and kind of help bring this one in for a landing. And it was a good week over on the Hill. The outpouring of support, getting a unanimous vote in the House, nearly unanimous in the Senate, it sends a strong message. Obviously, we got some work left to do on the project to, for Lockheed Martin to secure the bid. But having that support from the locals, from the state, from the governor, from the federal delegation who all came and showed their support, and then the overwhelming approval of that project and our ability to offer the funds to them, it's going to go a long way in helping us secure that.
So what's the next step? What's the next phase? So you've got the bond financing in place.
Right.
Is it just wait until July now, until the Department of Defense, or are there things that you can and will be doing in the meantime?
Well, it starts today. The governor has signed the legislation. Since the legislation is signed, now we obviously present that to Lockheed Martin, to the company, who then puts it into their official proposal that they hand over to the Department of Defense. Department of Defense knew this was coming. We've actually been working and talking with them for a while. Now that it's official, they can do their official submission, and the Department of Defense procurement process will start evaluating the contracts. We would anticipate sometime late July, maybe August. Sometimes they get drawn out a little bit further. There'll probably be a protest period by the two companies who don't win. That could drag it out a little bit longer, but we like to think we have all of our ducks in a row now. It's kind of on the federal government, the Department of Defense, to go ahead and make that decision. And then when they do, we'll have the closing, we'll do the sell of the bonds, and we'll get going and create some jobs.
Did it surprise you? Arkansas stepped up to the plate in terms of the state obligating some bonds for this project. Oshkosh and AM Motors, their states, Indiana and Wisconsin, I think respectively, are not doing this type of incentive package. Does it surprise you that Arkansas had something this unique?
It's surprising, but it's it was needed to kind of help bring the cost down. I think the Department of Defense is pleased with the overall per unit cost that Lockheed is able to do on these JLTV vehicles. We had to go through this, legislative session, very open, very transparent process, so the taxpayers know just exactly what's going into this project, what exactly to get out of it. I don't know if, behind the scenes there's been some incentives offered in those other states that just have not become public, which is, a lot of times the case. They're able to hold those confidential. Us having a very open and transparent process, we can put it all out there for everyone to see, so they now know. And the good thing is, though, it's past the final and best offer for the companies with the Department of Defense. So it's not like one of the other companies can run back and say, change it now because this is what Arkansas did. That's part of our bid, and I think the big reason why we're going to have a leg up going into this.
All right, we'll watch and see how things develop. I want to talk to you about a couple other things that you have been busy with and will be busy with. First of all, what you've been busy with, you and the governor, Charles Morgan from Axiom, a couple of other Arkansans went out to Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago, met with Facebook and I think Intuit, a couple of other high-tech firms out there. Was this a courtship? Was this an introduction period, or were you guys making up for anything? Or what was the whole purpose of that?
The purpose of the trip was to go out and tell the story to an area of the country that has just such a high concentration of high-tech jobs in the computer science field, to go out there and give us the opportunity to talk about Arkansas and what we're doing, and really for the governor to highlight the work that he and the legislature did this session in offering computer science in all high schools going forward. So it was an opportunity for us to get in front of CEOs of some of the companies you named: Facebook, Intuit, HP, SAP, Cisco, Intel. We're very busy in the 2 days that we were there, and we met with very high level CEO, C-suite type decision makers to get, just to get in front of them and talk about what we're offering in Arkansas. And that was kind of the foot in the door. This is, hey, you understand what we're doing, that we're going to have a whole generation coming out of the high schools now who have this ability, have the computer science, who are able to do coding. And then we could transition the conversation a little bit more into our quality of life, our cost of doing business, our tax structure, those things that we just we're way ahead of California where they are when they're offering a 13% state income tax on top of everything else. That the cost of a 2-bedroom apartment is $4,500. It's just people can't afford to live there. And then we talk about what we have to offer here. So this is really planting the seeds with these CEOs, letting them know, hey, we're here. This is what we have to offer. When you're going to do your next round of expansion or even in a relocation, keep us in mind. So it's just planting the seeds. We need to continue to foster those relationships. And honestly, the support that we received was just amazing. They kind of really rolled out the red carpet for the governor and the team that went out there. They were surprised that they haven't been visited by more governors. Some have done it, but Governor Hutchinson just did a tremendous job in selling the state. And then, as you mentioned, with Charles Morgan and some private sector folks going, it was great to have them at the table too, so they could tell their story about what it was like to to start and build and grow and sell a company in Arkansas in that field. So they were really able to speak that language.
All right, a little web extra here with Mike Preston, AEDC Director. We ran out of time on air, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. We were talking about your Silicon Valley trip out in California a couple of weeks ago, all the kind of good foundation that you laid there. I'm curious as to whether or not the RFRA debate came up in your conversations out there. That was a heavy conversation at the end of the legislative session, and some of those CEOs of some of those high-tech companies were on record as saying, we don't want Arkansas to go in that direction.
It never came up. We had many meetings over the course of 2 days. I mean, from sun up to sundown, we were in meetings with all these large companies, and was never brought up. So we were able to, we focused on telling the story of what passed in the session as far as the computer science goes, and then really telling the story of Arkansas, and trying to convince those CEOs when you're doing your next expansion to keep us in mind. But on the religious freedom, nothing ever came up.
What do you think is your, what's the next follow-up in terms of Silicon Valley and some of those folks? Do you, do you have to, will you see some results quickly from that, or do you think this is a multi-year kind of cultivation thing?
Absolutely, it's a multi-year cultivation. This is, like I said, planting the seeds. Now we just got to, nurture that relationship. Anytime that we pass a positive piece of legislation or we land a big project like the Lockheed one, shoot them an email and say, hey, I wanted to make sure you knew what was going on here in Arkansas. Are we, awarded some, any kind of superlative by a business magazine, or, cost of doing business, any of those things. We just, continue to have those conversations, and we'll probably do, subsequent follow-up trips in outer years, and then would certainly, obviously, invite them to the state as well.
And you're headed to Paris in about 2 weeks, I think. Maybe
Yes.
a little more than 2 weeks, to the Paris Air Show.
Correct.
What are your expectations for that? Besides flying and being in Paris, I mean,
Well, they say that a boardroom in Arkansas looks the same as a boardroom in Paris. So it's not like we're going to be out and seeing the Eiffel Tower and any of the sites. We're there to work the Paris Air Show. This is the first time that Arkansas has actually had a booth, that we've had a presence at the Paris Air Show, which is the largest air show in the world. We have the largest concentration of CEOs, decision level makers, of people in the aviation aerospace sector in one concentration. That doesn't happen, every 2 years when the Paris Air Show comes around, and then the off years it's the Farnborough, but the Paris Air Show is by far the largest one. So we're going to have the opportunity to have the governor at the booth showcasing what all Arkansas has to offer. We have businesses, airports, the World Trade Center, a lot of organizations from Arkansas represented, who are all going to help us go and tell that story. And then obviously the expectation is us to get in front of these CEOs and tell our story about Arkansas, talk about all the suppliers that we have that can supply what we have here now, and just looking to to grow more jobs out of that, bring more business in the aviation and aerospace. A lot of people don't understand Arkansas aerospace exports are Arkansas's biggest manufacturing export. Absolutely, it's our #1 export. So that's something that obviously make that at the top of the page. We'll tell that story over and over again, and we have a tremendous foothold in the sector right now. We're always looking to continue to grow, and this is the opportunity for us to do that. Have a good trip and be safe. Thanks. All right, Mike Preston with AEDC. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. That's our web extra. You can keep up with more every day in terms of business and politics at talkbusiness.net.